So this is what I do, and I think today, every morning I have to decide who I am going to be that day. But for today, I've decided that this is what I'm going to show you. I do apologize, but I will show you a number of buildings, but for the reason of actually making a point. So the theme of today's presentation is going to be integrated infrastructures, and I will start with a section that I produced in the year 2009 as a part of my diploma project in Vienna, which speculates on a new kind of form of Olympic village, where basically all the stadia, they connect into one giant infrastructure, and then any spectators then have the opportunity to kind of see events multiple events at the same time, and there is a kind of a great benefit of the close agency of the different stadia. I think this section was quite instrumental for me, so that's why I'm going to show it again. And I think it led to not only the kind of passion for sport typology in my professional practice, but also, I mean, then on the way I also taken on board other themes like structure, clarity. I was always interested in kind of expressions where one can clearly read the kind of relationship between tensile and compressive forces. And yeah, so multiple stadia that I was involved in. But then I'm going to jump to this one, because then 2 years ago I actually got a brief that allowed me to revisit the very idea for my diploma project, where the brief was asking for a football stadium and an arena, and I actually tested it whether this could work in terms of kind of creating a new typology where in one sort of building system you integrate the football stadium and multi-purpose arena, and also a kind of a conference center in the middle that you see in the section. What was also quite important was the introduction of ancillary program in that you can kind of clearly read through the cuts on the facade, because then they sort of, because I do take a certain interest in stadia, because they are the only typology where you don't have to argue for scale, and here you can see that the face of the stadium, sort of by the introduction of the cuts and by the kind of invitation of other offerings and programs, kind of creates a bit of a different urban face. Which you can see here, so you can clearly, through the cuts, you don't only read the program, but you also read the kind of structure clarity that I mentioned before. And yeah, so this is how it sits there. I think this is sort of how then the venue is organized. Like, don't mind the fruit salad around, but I think it's more about the piece and how it operates. So the two. Okay, so just need to get there. Yeah, so you see on the right that the kind of multi-purpose arena. Then in the middle is the conference center, and then on the other side is the 60,000 football stadium. So here, when I kind of revisited the section, it wasn't very different from the section that I drew 2009. So I kind of sort of proved that there was some kind of intuitive idea that I think works. So here you see the kind of the inclusion of the other program, then how the multi-purpose hall and the conference event sits there. This is then how it sort of behaves to the surrounding by the inclusion of the cuts and the program. Yeah, and then this is then how the inclusion of the additional program works towards the urban phase, which I find quite successful. It sort of redefines the way that stadia actually sit in the city. I'll just go quickly through that. So, and then you can see that the experience at the same moment can really differ. So from the kind of football to the conference center, and then on the other side, as a visitor, like you can experience the multi-purpose arena that kind of have several modes, from like handball, volleyball, and to box and concerts, etc. There's also multiple offerings on the exterior, because the way that you redefine the typology, you also create kind of offerings for outdoor events, etc. And that kind of led me into a theme of the integrated infrastructures, where you sort of speculate on the kind of relationships of different typologies and what they could bring you in terms of architecture typology and expression. Oh, sorry. So this is a theme that I then carried forward into my teaching. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples of what we're trying to chase in terms of integrated infrastructure at the Bartlett. So I think the first one is a typology where we kind of speculated on a new form of fish market, that it's based on a lab-grown tuna. And it's sort of like, it speculates on the connection between a facility that combines obviously a production facility and also F&B and also multiple labs, etc. So I think this is how the lab-grown tuna would actually look like. So you can already see that there's a kind of auction setting, and then the restaurants in the background. I think it's sort of kind of plays with the idea that was quite present in Japan in terms of the sushi robots. They never really made it, but I think there was a kind of a very particular relationship to technology that the Japanese culture possesses. And also the idea of cyborg kind of comes in, like the kind of the combination of organic and technology. And yeah, as I said, it kind of combines the production facility with the restaurant. So I think the basic idea was sort of the relationship of a plinth that actually has the production facility in it, and then there was a kind of idea of a roof that is able to accommodate multiple programs. So starting with the restaurant and going into the labs, etc. I think obviously, needless to say that we also take lots of interest in materiality and the kind of the structural performance, and so here you see the kind of study into splices and into timber joinery. I mean, in my world, the joints within the building systems, they are all different because they respond to kind of different conditions within the building, so they take different loads, different bending moments, etc. So we also kind of do lots of prototyping, and I think what is also important is the moment of unexpected. So we kind of developed this layered joint that kind of works quite well in bending, etc. But then I think the most unexpected moment was actually the scale of the joint. And I think then it sort of brings a very different offerings to the architecture typology, and it gets much more intense when you speculate on that. So this is kind of the first encounter with the production facility. Here you see how the labs would be sort of nested within that structural system, and then you kind of can read already the certain pockets within there. This is a certain ritual that they always do when they fish a new tuna. So this is how that could operate with the lab-grown tuna. This is the auction facility that then kind of operates within the roof, within those pockets that I was talking about before. And then I think this is the kind of very calm elevation that basically brings the new typology, but what's behind that is the kind of very intense section that sort of plays with the idea that I presented at the very beginning on that sketch. So I think it really sort of evolves into an organism that it's able to kind of combine the production facilities, the labs and the restaurants into even some kind of Japanese courtyards here. So one is then able to sort of create enclosures within the roof structure, and it's sort of, I think it doesn't operate on that logic of a plinth and a roof, but I think then it's starting to be much more. So that's why, again, you kind of create a very kind of integrated food infrastructure in this way. Yeah, I mean, obviously, kind of take lots of interest in the structural performance. So actually, it's quite elastic because of the seismic. So yeah, I'm going to skip that. So this is how the morning would look like, the new lab-grown tunas. And I think let's stick with timber for a while. And I think this was a project we did this year. We used to call it Timber the City. I mean, here's timber in the city. But it's actually a speculation of what will happen if our civic infrastructure, as we know it here in London, would actually be all timber. And because you know, it used to be that way, and I think there is no kind of reason for ignoring timber on a large sort of infrastructure project. So we started with the speculation that how a large infrastructure project in central London, all built in timber, would look like. So I think this is sort of an interest into the anisotropic kind of properties of the material, kind of recognizing also kind of learning from the past, recognizing a different kind of ground pattern, how that sort of contributes to different components, and that timber is obviously highly directional, so how it was kind of used in the past, how that was sort of harnessed, the directionality, etc. And then kind of going into the concept of lamination, but on a very different scale than is usually known. So almost kind of thinking of a lamination process as a form of kind of additive manufacturing, that you kind of adding the layers and etc. So I think kind of multiple components that they all work. I think again the scale is quite important. So this is a model of a joint that obviously it's quite intense in scale, but it's all based on the idea of lamination or physically tested. Then basically through that process you sort of start to recognize the constraints in terms of scale that the timber structure of that would have, and also then kind of understanding these particular moments where you kind of find the bending. This is something what a tree does all the time, because then timber is twice as strong in tension than in compression. So I think this is how it actually deals with bending, and then kind of abstracting that principle and bringing it into the idea of the three-dimensional lamination that you can see here. And it's not a coincidence that structure like that would actually resemble a tree, because then I think the principles are quite the same, how that works with the forces. Then obviously, again, kind of splicing. Here you see the lamination. Again, something that you need to understand is the scale of the component. Again, some physical, digital as well as physical testing. And then once we sort of define the constraints at the scale of that, we actually started kind of speculating on the typology, and then we also developed a quite similar proposal than to the project before, where you kind of have several layers, then starting with the train station, going all the way to market, and then always having kind of nested restaurants in a higher portion of the roof. Obviously, you are familiar with, again, the relationship between tensile and compressive forces, what pattern they give you. And then this is a kind of first glimpse into the very intense system of the 3D laminated structure. And you can see how the parts are nested into that, how you start introducing program into that roof. You can see here the botanical garden above a train station is a glimpse of that. And then I think it gets even more intense in the long section. So here you see the kind of inclusion of the garden, then how that works with the trains, and here you already start recognizing how the roof system is able to create enclosures. And then this is the kind of answer of Timber the City, that this is London, Euston, kind of all in timber. So I think also urbanistically, the edge towards the city is quite successful. Yeah, here you see a portion of kind of showing the program with the enclosure. So there could be kind of restaurants, F&B, and other sort of maybe even commercial opportunities. And here you see the market. And here you see the cross paths. They're actually going through the entire station, and that connects the different program. So the next one is it's much smaller scale, a kind of similar idea of sort of tapping into almost a forgotten typology of a railway pub. So we set ourselves on a journey to actually deliver the Kordeslager. So this is a railway station combined with the railway pub in Arctic. So it's the most northern brewery, and you can kind of see this bit of a beer infrastructure, and how then the typology of the pub actually influences the railway typology. So, yeah, we kind of, again, joinery is something that we're very much interested in. We sort of argue for the kind of full flavor project, so no hiding in the abstract, like, trying to articulate everything and then sort of assessing that. Yeah, so that's kind of enough of timber. I'm gonna kind of flip quickly through some kind of more urban proposals that we looked at. I think there was a project that we kind of speculated on a massive population growth in Seoul, in Korea, kind of followed by the reunification of the peninsula. So kind of obviously developing certain tools based on space syntax and kind of understanding the spatial opportunities that such a kind of dense urban fabric offers. And then kind of through all that process into kind of looking into the urban fabric of Seoul, we sort of concluded that the streets and the roads are actually a great opportunity for ultra densification of a city, but sort of not on the expense of kind of losing the character of it. So there was the idea that instead of adding a volume, you basically kind of re-question all within certain area or the road systems, and you see the spatial opportunities that are there. So you basically kind of dig down and you start exposing kind of basements and you start kind of bringing the character of what is perceived to be overground also into the underground city. So in a way, kind of show on this simple image, before and after. So this is how you kind of seek additional opportunities within our urban fabrics, and then you're able to sort of achieve certain ultra densification. So this is how intense the section would get. So you kind of you can recognize different pockets, almost kind of cultural pockets, then like the more commercial pockets, and then how then roads and infrastructures are nested into that. And then I think what was quite important we were trying to prove that you can densify a city without actually the city losing its character, because I think Seoul is quite particular in that way. So I think the cyberpunk moments within that, they got more and more intense as you were sort of adding additional urban fabric and finding opportunities there. And then you were kind of the ideas of the hidden rivers, and how they would nest the program. So this is a section of how that would look like, kind of starting from, you see the kind of original level, and then what nests underground. Yeah, some of the kind of detailing of the terracing that occurs there. And here you see the section of kind of combining the traditional temple on one side, and then, because I think the temples, they actually follow the similar logic. They kind of layered in time. And then on the right side, you sort of have the kind of more commercial districts that could offer. Yeah. I think the cyberpunk was quite evident in there. Another urban project kind of speculates on the extreme use of oblique. So that I think we located in Hong Kong now, and I think what we were chasing here, it was the integration of all the kind of flavors that Hong Kong could offer. So we've done a horse racetrack. We kind of nested it in the kind of very extreme sort of oblique cityscape that kind of occupies that and kind of flows under and above the racetrack. There's also marina nested in there and several food markets. And it was a certain critique on how Hong Kong is currently dealing with its waterfront. And that was a kind of attempt to reactivate that and to have a slightly different take on land reclamation methods. So on the section, you can now see how the kind of horse racetrack is interwoven into the city fabric. And then you see also what the oblique planes could offer then for the urban typology. So you see the jockey club, then the horses, then there is also a marina that is nested there. There's a boat terminal. Yeah, here you can see the marina, how it's nested there, and it sort of speculates on a urban design from a slightly different perspective, because what it tries to intensify is the character that we observed and that we found in the Hong Kong fabric, and it sort of tries to kind of bring that back to the waterfront that is currently quite dead. So that's how the horses will. Yeah, so there's some overview. So I think then it's like you can see there on that image there how it sort of connects to the scale of the fabric that it's behind the kind of skyline that is there currently. You see here. So in a way, it sort of continues the grain of the city that's on the left, and that's being disconnected by the commercial development on the waterfront. Yeah, and I think that's it. I was hard.